The fluorescent lights of Miller's diner cast harsh shadows across Sarah Chen's face as she wiped down the same table for the third time in 5 minutes. The small-town diner in Millbrook, Ohio, had been her sanctuary and prison for the past 2 years, a place where she could disappear into the rhythm of work and avoid the whispers that followed her everywhere else. "Table 6 needs their check," called out Dolores, the head waitress, her gravelly voice cutting through the afternoon. At 62, Dolores had worked every shift at Miller's for over 2 decades, and her weathered hands moved with the efficiency of someone who had served thousands of cups of coffee and heard just as many stories. Sarah nodded, smoothing down her uniform apron. The fabric felt heavier today, like everything else in her life. She carried herself with the careful posture of someone who had learned to make herself small, to take up as little space as possible in a world that had made it clear she didn't quite fit. The bell above the door chimed, and Sarah glanced up to see Mrs. Henderson entering with her usual entourage of church ladies. Sarah's stomach tightened. Mrs. Henderson had been her mother's best friend before the accident. Before everything changed, Mrs. Henderson's voice carried that particular tone, the one that sounded sympathetic but felt like pity. "How are you managing?" "I'm fine, Mrs. Henderson. Just working." Sarah's voice was barely above a whisper, the same volume she'd adopted since childhood, when her stutter made speaking feel like navigating a minefield. Mrs. Henderson's companion, a woman Sarah recognized but couldn't name, leaned in. "It's such a shame about her face," she whispered, not quite quietly enough. "The doctors said they did their best, but, well, you can see, and with that stutter, poor thing. Margaret always said no one would ever love her like that." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory, the same words, spoken in frustration during one of their many arguments about Sarah's future. "With that face and that stutter, who's going to want you? No one will ever love her." Sarah's hand instinctively moved to her left cheek, where the scars from the car accident 5 years ago created a web of raised tissue that pulled at her skin when she smiled. She'd stopped smiling much after that. "I'll seat you ladies," Dolores intervened, shooting Sarah a protective look. "Sarah, honey, why don't you take your break?" Sarah nodded gratefully and slipped through the back door into the alley behind the diner. The October air was crisp, carrying the scent of burning leaves and the promise of winter. She leaned against the brick wall, fighting back tears that threatened to spill over. The sound of footsteps made her look up. A man in military fatigues was walking down the alley, looking lost. He was tall, with sandy brown hair and the kind of bearing that spoke of discipline and purpose. When he saw her, he stopped. "Excuse me," he said, his voice warm and genuinely polite. "I'm looking for Miller's diner. My GPS seems to have given up on me." Sarah pointed toward the front of the building, her throat tight. It's just around the corner," she managed, the words coming out in a rush. He smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes, and Sarah felt something shift inside her chest. "Thank you. I'm Marcus, by the way." "Marcus Rivera." "Sarah," she replied, surprised by her own boldness in offering her name. "Nice to meet you, Sarah. I don't suppose you know if they're hiring. I'm stationed at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, about an hour from here, and I'm looking for some part-time work on my days off." Sarah's eyes widened. You want to work here?" Marcus nodded, seemingly unaware of her scars, her stutter, or the way she kept her face partially turned away from him. "I've heard good things about small-town diners. Plus, I could use some extra income, and I like staying busy." "I work there," Sarah said, then immediately felt foolish for stating the obvious. "That's great. Maybe you could put in a good word for me." Marcus's smile was hopeful, not demanding. "I promise I'm a hard worker. Military training, and all that." Before Sarah could respond, Dolores's voice called from the back door. "Sarah, honey, your break's over. We're getting busy." "I have to go," Sarah said quickly, moving toward the door. "Of course, Sarah," Marcus called after her. "Thanks for the directions. And for what it's worth, you have a really kind smile." Sarah froze, her hand on the door handle. When she turned back, Marcus was already walking away, but his words echoed in her mind. No one had complimented her smile in years. Back inside the diner, the afternoon rush was in full swing. Sarah moved through her tasks mechanically, but her thoughts kept drifting to the soldier in the alley. When the bell above the door chimed again, she looked up to see Marcus entering. looking around the diner with the same appreciative expression he'd worn when he smiled at her. Dolores approached him with a menu. Table for one, hun. Actually, I was hoping to speak with the manager about possible employment, Marcus said. I'm Marcus Rivera. Well, I'll be damned, Dolores grinned. We've been short-staffed for months. Sam, she called toward the kitchen, get out here. We might have found ourselves another pair of hands. Sam Miller, the diner's owner and head cook, emerged from the kitchen wiping his hands on his apron. He was a man in his 50s with kind eyes and the permanent 5 o'clock shadow of someone who worked 18-hour days. You looking for work, son? Yes, sir. I'm stationed at Wright-Patterson, looking for part-time work on my days off. I have experience in food service from my time in the military. Sam looked Marcus up and down, taking in his pressed uniform and respectful demeanor. Military? Huh. What branch? Air Force, sir. Staff Sergeant Rivera. Well, Staff Sergeant Rivera, when can you start? Marcus's face lit up. Whenever you need me, sir. How about tomorrow? We'll start you off with a few shifts. See how you do. Dolores here will show you the ropes. As the conversation continued, Sarah found herself stealing glances at Marcus. There was something different about him, a quiet confidence that didn't demand attention but commanded respect. When he laughed at something Sam said, the sound was genuine and warm. Sarah, Dolores called, come over here. Marcus is going to be working with us. Since you know the dinner shift best, you can help train him. Sarah's heart hammered in her chest as she approached the group. Marcus turned to her with that same warm smile. We meet again, he said. Looks like we're going to be working together. Why yes, Sarah managed, acutely aware of Mrs. Henderson and her friends watching from their corner booth. I'm looking forward to it, Marcus said. And something in his tone made Sarah believe he meant it. As Marcus filled out his paperwork, Sarah returned to her tables, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted in her small, carefully controlled world. For the first time in years, she found herself looking forward to tomorrow. 3 weeks into working at Miller's Diner, Marcus Rivera had become something of a local phenomenon. The lunch crowd had grown noticeably, with women from 3 counties over finding reasons to stop by for coffee and pie. Marcus handled the attention with the same polite professionalism he brought to everything else, but Sarah noticed he seemed most comfortable during the quieter moments, when the diner emptied out and real conversations could happen. Order up, Sam called from the kitchen, sliding 2 plates across the pass-through window. Sarah reached for them, but Marcus was already there, his movements efficient and purposeful. I've got it, he said, flashing her a quick smile. Table 12, right. Sarah nodded, watching as he delivered the order with the same attention to detail he brought to every task. In the 3 weeks since he'd started, Marcus had proven himself to be exactly what he'd promised, a hard worker who treated every customer with respect and every task with importance. He's a good one, Dolores said, appearing beside Sarah with a fresh pot of coffee. Haven't seen someone take to the work like that in years. He is, Sarah agreed quietly. And he's got good instincts about people, Dolores continued, her voice taking on that knowing tone she used when she was trying to make a point. Always make sure to give you the easier tables when you're having a rough day. Sarah looked at Dolores in surprise. What do you mean, honey? You think I haven't noticed? Every time someone comes in here looking to give you a hard time, Marcus somehow ends up being the one to serve them. And when you're struggling with your words, he's always right there to help without making a big deal about it. Sarah's chest tightened. She had noticed that Marcus seemed to appear whenever she needed help, but she'd assumed it was coincidence. The thought that he might be doing it deliberately filled her with a warmth she didn't quite know how to process. The afternoon lull settled over the diner, and Sarah found herself working alongside Marcus to prepare for the dinner rush. They moved around each other with an ease that surprised her. Marcus seemed to anticipate her needs, stepping aside when she needed to reach for something, handing her supplies before she asked. Sarah, Marcus said during a quiet moment, can I ask you something? Sarah's pulse quickened. Okay, I've been thinking about taking some classes at the community college in the evenings, maybe something in business or communications. Do you know anything about their programs? Sarah blinked in surprise. You want to go to school? I've got about 2 years left on my current enlistment. I'm thinking about what comes next. Marcus leaned against the counter, his expression thoughtful. I love serving my country, but I also want to build something, maybe own a business someday. That's really admirable, Sarah said, meaning it. What about you? Did you always want to work in food service? The question caught Sarah off guard. No one had asked her about her dreams in years. I used to want to be a teacher, she said quietly. Elementary school. I loved working with kids. Used to want to be. What changed? Sarah's hand moved instinctively to her scars. After my accident, I thought it would be too hard. Kids can be. They ask questions. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Can I tell you something? I've been working here for 3 weeks, and I've watched you with every customer who's walked through that door. You have this way of making people feel comfortable, of really listening to them. That's not something you can teach. That's a gift. Sarah felt tears prick at her eyes. I don't think Mrs. Patterson's grandson comes in here every Tuesday after school, Marcus continued. He's got to be about 8 years old, and he's shy as anything. But he lights up when he sees you. You remember his name. You ask about his baseball games. You make him feel important. That's what good teachers do. But my face, my stutter. Sarah, look at me. Marcus's voice was gentle, but firm. When she met his eyes, he continued, I've seen you handle angry customers with patience, comfort people who are having bad days, and show kindness to everyone who walks through that door. Your scars don't define you. Your stutter doesn't diminish you. Your heart, that's what people see when they really look. Sarah felt something crack open inside her chest. Why are you being so nice to me? Marcus smiled, and there was something vulnerable in his expression. Because you're worth being nice too. And because I think you're pretty, amazing. The bell above the door chimed, interrupting the moment. Mrs. Henderson entered with her usual group, and Sarah felt her newfound confidence waver. But Marcus stepped forward smoothly. Good afternoon, ladies. Table 44. As Marcus seated them, Sarah heard Mrs. Henderson's companion whisper loudly, That new boy is certainly handsome. Such a waste that he's working in a place like this. Military boys are always so polite, Mrs. Henderson replied. Though I do wonder what he thinks of our Sarah. Must be quite a shock for someone like him to work alongside. Well, you know. Sarah felt the familiar shame wash over her. But then, Marcus was back, his expression calm but his eyes flashing with something that looked like anger. Sarah, he said, his voice carrying just loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. I'm going to need your help with something in the back. You know more about this place than anyone. As they walked toward the kitchen, Marcus leaned close to her ear. Don't let them get to you. They don't know what they're talking about. But the damage was done. Sarah felt herself retreating into the protective shell she'd built over the years. For the rest of the shift, she kept her head down, spoke only when necessary, and avoided Marcus's concerned glances. As closing time approached, Sarah was cleaning tables when she heard Marcus talking quietly with Dolores by the register. Double quotes. Not right, he was saying. The way some people treat her. She's been dealing with it for years, Dolores replied sadly. Ever since the accident, her own mother used to say terrible things about her chances of finding love. Some people just don't know how to see past the surface. Well, they're idiots, Marcus said firmly. She's beautiful. Sarah's hand stilled on the table she was cleaning. Beautiful. Marcus had called her beautiful. You really think so? Dolores asked, and Sarah could hear the smile in her voice. I know so, Marcus replied. And someday, I hope she'll believe it too. That night, as Sarah drove home to her small apartment, Marcus's words echoed in her mind. For the first time in years, she found herself looking at her reflection in the rearview mirror, not with shame, but with curiosity. Maybe, just maybe, there was more to her than the scars and the stutter. Maybe Marcus was right. Maybe her heart was what people saw when they really looked. The next morning, Sarah woke up early and, for the first time in months, chose to wear a dress to work instead of her usual jeans and t-shirts. It was a small act of courage, but it felt like a beginning. When she arrived at the diner, Marcus was already there, setting up for the morning shift. When he saw her, his face lit up with a smile that made her heart skip. Good morning, Sarah. You look beautiful today. And for the first time since she could remember, Sarah believed it might be true.